Green Man by Sarah Lloyd-Winder, storyteller, for St Albans Cathedral. The two children had been playing out all summer. It had been great. But now, of course, it was autumn, and the nights were drawing in, and it got dark earlier and earlier. But they still went out, and tonight they'd run out into the wood. They'd seen the trees and the bushes, and they'd followed the pathways that they really enjoyed. But suddenly it was dark. And when it gets dark, everything changes. The leaves are no longer green, they're shadows. And the pathway disappears, and the bushes seem to jump out at you, and the brambles suddenly trip you over. And the two little girls were lost. And the little one reached out her hand, and the big one grabbed it and pulled her close. But they weren't scared. No, they definitely weren't scared. Even if they were, they would get out of here. All right. You see, the big one had always looked after the little one. She didn't talk much. She was much quieter. So the big one was her voice. Nobody knew what the little one thought of it. But it seemed a good idea. So they started walking. Then they heard a snuffling, a grunting snuffling. And the little one said, "It's a hedge pig." "No," said the big one, "it's a hedgehog," being a bit pedantic about it. "I know," said the little one, "but I like calling it a hedge pig." And she listened as it snuffled along. And they just both followed it, because they knew a hedgehog would go the same direction every day, so perhaps it might take them to where they knew. So they followed the hedgehog. And then the big one said, "There's a badger." And the little one said, Look over there. It's a fox." And the big one said, "There's a deer, look. Beautiful antlers." The little one said, "There's something tiny. It's a shrew." And the big one said, "There's a bird." And they realised that they were surrounded by animals. And it was almost like they were being pushed forward into the woods. And suddenly they could see a great big green opening in the centre. And it seemed to be lit. And they kept walking with the animals forward and forward until the little one pulled the big one back. "Look," she said. And they looked. And there was a group of people. Now, you were careful of animals, but you were more careful of people. "Looks like a troop of Morris dancers," said the big one. "They're a bit odd for Morris," said the little. "Look, they're green everywhere." And they did look. And they did seem to be green everywhere. You know, Morris, changes of colour. But no, green everywhere. Well, woven leaves everywhere. Leaves coming out and twigs. And then the little one said, "Even out of their mouths." Yes, even out of their mouths. And they were leaning forward, really staring at them, really looking, when suddenly they realised they were being looked at, and they tried to go backwards and away, but no, they were picked up from behind and brought into the circle and dropped one of the green figures moved towards them, and they realised he was enormous, perhaps even a giant. And he looked down at them and he said, "Who are you?" And the big one said, "We're sisters." "What are you doing here?" "We're lost." "You're lost here? Tonight?" They both nodded. And so he stepped back and he talked to all of them, and the two could hear. "Well, they're here now. What are we going to do? Can't get rid of them. If they're lost, we've got to get them back somewhere." "Well, they won't remember. It doesn't matter. Best be kind." And one of the green figures stepped forward and smiled. And they realised this was a woman. "Now, dearies," she said, "you've come upon us on a special night. And there's going to be some dancing and other things. And you just be very good. Can you be very good?" They said. "Now, can you sit very still?" "Oh, yes," said the big one. "Can you keep very quiet?" "Oh, yes," said the big one. "Right then," said the lady. And she took their hands and took them to a seat. It was nice and cosy, the seat. They didn't know where it had come from. And then leaves were wrapped around them. It was really cosy. And they sat as the group of very strange Morris went into the centre. And the big one looked at the leaves all the way round and said, "They're all dressed in oak, you know. They're an oak Morris or something, I think. Do you think they're going to dance?" And then the music started. And the set of green dancers took partners. And their dance was slow and sombre and gentle and warm. And their movements were swinging and careful. Wasn't anything like the Morris the two girls had ever done. But it was beautiful and relaxing, and they were drifting into a lovely sense of feeling. When the music changed, and as they looked across, they could see another group come in. All green again, but this green was different. This green was dark and shiny. And they all seemed to be slightly taller and straighter, this lot, and struttier. It's not really a word, is it, struttier? But they seemed to strut around. They were younger. "Yes," said the older one, "they look younger." "Yes," said the little one. He's like, he's like, he's not old enough to be out in the world yet." "Oh, he's big, but not old enough." Said the big one. "I know what you mean. All gawky." And then their music started. And it was a bit sharper as they danced, a little bit more jittery. And then the two groups came together. "Do you think they're going to fight?" said the big one. "Oh, not," said the little one. And they eyed each other up, the two groups. And the tall giant who'd been so kind to them drew himself up and walked to meet the young, green, dark giant. "I know," said the big one. "He's Holly." "The oak and the holly. Are they going to fight?" And they looked as if they were. They pulled out great big They weren't quite swords, but they were sword-like. They were like sticks. They seemed to have twining leaves round the bottom, and they were very straight. And they hit each other. Bang, bang, crash, crash, move, sway, bang, crash. And then they disappeared, those sticks. And all the dancers made a great big circle around them. And they started slowly. But then the music got faster and faster and faster, and they got swinging round and round and round and round and round, and madness. And they seemed to lift people off the floor, and people were flying around. Well, they weren't really flying around, but their legs were in the air as they swung and they danced. And just as it had got so fast, it seemed to stop and slow down, and the two groups separated. And now the oak giant was all bent over, creased and low, and his group came and lifted him up, and they carried him out, and they went. And the two little girls grabbed hands together. And the holly giant came over to them, and he looked at them. "Well," he said, "did you enjoy that?" "Yes," they said. "It was good." He said. "Well, go to sleep, my littles, for now it is the time of the Winter King, the Holly King. We go into the cold time until spring comes and my friend, the oak, comes back again. Good night, little one." And he seemed to lift a blanket. Until suddenly they were woken by their big sister walking in. "What are you two doing?" she said. "We've been looking for you everywhere." She grabbed their hands and shook them. "Come home now. There'll be trouble." And they ran all the way home. And they didn't quite tell what had happened in the wood. They thought they shouldn't. But they must have told somebody. Otherwise, how could I tell you the tale today? The tale of the green men, the Holly King and the Oak King, and the changing of the seasons. And that is the end of my tale.